All right, friends, welcome to Rest and Restore Happier Hour. Tonight we'll be using our strap a little bit, and then you might want some extra padding underneath you, especially if you're on a hard surface or it's chilly, because we're going to be on the ground quite a bit. In fact, for probably most of it, I might do a little stuff on our side, but let's get started on our back with knees bent and feet flat, just to see if we can get our pelvis moving a little bit through some tilts. Might help you to take your hands on the front of your pelvic rim, just so you can kind of feel that moving landmark as you tuck and untuck your tailbone. Or you can think about tipping those front hip points upwards towards the ribs without lifting the hips, and then tipping those same aspects towards the thigh bone. Your low back will arch just slightly. I really like this movement a lot, which is why we do it so often, and I feel like it's a really nice way to tap into some of the muscles we don't think about too often in the backside. We're essentially working the muscles of the lumbar spine, but in a really relaxed way, nothing too intense, not a true spine extension pose or back bend, but just something really accessible, grounded, and hopefully feel safe for you. You can think of it as your back core, back low core. And then you might also feel how the glutes might start to engage when you move in that opposite direction as you tuck the tailbone and your low back flattens out a little bit more. You might feel a little squeeze in those glutes, especially right where they meet your hamstrings. Now let's just rest and find kind of neutral position for the pelvis, for the spine. Your hands can stay on your body or stretch out to the floor. We will spend a little bit of time just breathing nice and soft, and maybe not overly full, but perhaps more attentive. Welcoming in some width to that breath expansion. Still allowing and inviting the belly to rise and fall. You'll notice the ribs shifting and stretching. The bottom of the sternum might also lift and lower with that breath. Let's take 2 more breaths. And I'm going to take my socks off for this first part. I might decide to put them back on, but I want to be able to move my toes a little bit. You could still do this portion with your socks on. We're going to keep the left foot grounded with a bent knee and stretch the right leg up, but don't worry about getting it straight, just so you can see your toes. And we'll think of hooking the toes over a little perch, flexing the toes, and then try to draw your toes back towards your nose and flare them apart so you can create some little gaps between each one of your toes. Let's do that 5 more times. Curl and flare. Last 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now just a pointing and a flexing of the ankle. We'll get to the rotation in a moment, but let's see for now if we can keep the ankle relatively straight in terms of the toes staying in the same line as the heel and the ankle, and just gas pedal your foot. Sometimes there's a little fatigue that can creep in here, especially as we target this right leg in multiple ways, so feel free to just rest if it gets to be too intense. Now we'll add our rotation in, trying to find the largest but cleanest circle you can make. Let's do a couple the other way. Next stop, you're just going to softly bend your knee. Notice where it naturally wants to stop. And you can allow your knee to move in slightly towards your body if that helps you. And now use your hands or your strap. Come onto the top of your shin with that grip. And I want you to think about kicking your shin up into your hands, but keep holding your leg in. So if I were to let go of my leg right now, my knee would go all the way straight. I'm pushing up, trying to open my knee without letting it go. One more nice long breath here. And then release your arms back down by your side. Draw your leg away from you again so that your thigh bone becomes vertical or perpendicular to the floor. And then we're going to open the knee as much as we can, potentially all the way straight, and then close the knee gently. It doesn't have to be a good squeeze back there, just kind of a relaxation. Targeting the quads as we extend the knee, and then just letting that foot fall back down. Let's do 3 more like that. Beautiful. Let's use the strap for this next bit. It doesn't have to be in a lasso. You can just hold the tail ends. But if it's in a lasso, that should also work. With your leg as vertical as it can go, let's do mini rotations for that hip. So you're just going to angle your toes over to the right and just pull back a little bit with the strap. It almost feels like you're just drawing your leg closer to your body. And then you can relax off that pulling action and rotate your leg inward so the kneecap and the toes point towards your midline or towards your left. Roll it back out, just a little resistance of the strap once you get there. Soften resistance, spiral your thigh bone to internal rotation. Externally rotate, a little grip. And then let go of that grip and internally rotate again. And then we'll find neutral rotation for the thigh. Draw your leg as close to you as you want it to be to benefit your hamstrings. And if you want to layer in more intensity, your left leg can stretch back down to the ground. That might impact how your low back feels in this shape. You could also put a yoga block underneath your leg, your left leg. That's my favorite. Let us release the grip on that strap and set it off to the side for now. Rebend your right knee and just hold on to it with right hand and make some assisted rotations. They can be very small. They could get a little bigger, but just see where it takes you. Roll it the other way a couple times. And if you have anything underneath your left leg, let's slide that out of the way and stretch both legs out for Shavasana for just an assessment to see how we feel. Highlighting the sensation of the leg that's been active. Noticing if it feels warmer, cooler, longer, shorter, heavier, lighter. Now let's rebend both knees, plant your feet hips width. Our left leg is going to stay put for now. Arms can come out to a T. And we want to try to keep this right foot just a little wider, and then the left foot's going to stay in line with the left hip. Right foot's out on a diagonal, maybe even towards the edge of your mat. Roll onto the pinky edge of your right foot, turn your knee open to the side. And then try to roll to the inner arch of your right foot and let that right knee reach towards the left thigh, or you can think towards the front left corner of your mat. So it's a teeny tiny windshield wiper. Just a few more outward and inward. And when you get to that inward, if your right leg actually meets up with your left leg, give them a little squeeze together before you take the right leg back out to the side. Let's just do 2 more on this first cycle. Same series now. We'll go all the way through that on the left leg. Hoping I can remember everything. Bring heels to hips width. Arms can be wherever. Left leg up, but don't worry about getting it straight. And we start with the toe flexion, hooking it over an imaginary perch, and then draw your toes towards you and try to spread them out a little bit more. And just do 5. Ooh, I almost got a cramp. 4, 3, 2, and 1. I should also add that if you feel like it would help you to actually hold your leg up there, you could use your strap. Next, we'll move on to the straight ankle movement. Just plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. Working on keeping the ball of the foot basically in that same line as the heel and the ankle before we add in the rolls. Seeing how many little wrinkles you can make in the front of your ankle, and then try to make a bunch of wrinkles on the back. Two more. Now a full rotation. Add in some internal resistance to make it feel a little bit more muscular than just a wobbly circle. And notice if you can just move that joint and restrict movement in your shin or your hip. And then go the other way. Okay, rest off the ankle movement. Start to slowly bend the left knee. Give it a little bit of a squeeze towards you, just so that you can hold onto the front of your shin. That could be with your strap or with your hands interlaced. And then you're gently pressing back up into your hands with that left shin, like you're trying to open your leg, but the strength of your arms is resisting that effort, just for a few breaths. Now left leg is going straight and back to vertical. So might have to move your knee a little bit further away from your body so it stays stacked over your hip joint. Straighten it as much as you can so you can feel your quads engage when you do that. You might even take your hand to your leg to make sure that they're on. And then softly bend your knee. Don't worry about overdoing that part. Just a few more like that. Full knee extension. And just a gradual flexion. Last one or two. And then get your strap. We'll do a few of the rotations. So with heels stacked over the hip, dial your leg bone externally, toes point out to the left, and then just a little bit of a drawing back with the strap, just to feel that grounded nature. I don't know why I like that, I just do. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it. I think it feels good. But relax off of it, let's turn it inward. That never felt good to me to pull it in, so I haven't been cueing it. Back to neutral. External rotation without sweeping the leg open, and just a little pull back. Soften the grip on the strap. Dial your left leg back in so the toes point towards your midline. And two more times. External rotation, little tug, and then release to internal rotation. Final one. Now we'll be in neutral rotation, knees and toes in the same line, basically as that hip front. And we're just looking for our maximal range with a fairly straight knee, bringing that leg as close to you as you're able without suffering. And then you can either keep the right leg as is, or you can support that right leg with a block, or simply stretch it all the way to the ground. Arrange your arms in such a way that you could maybe bring your upper arms to the ground. Final couple breaths here. And I don't know about you, but my hands need a break from holding this strap. So let's get rid of that. Replant both of your feet, and on this round, the right leg will stay, the right foot rather, will stay mostly in line with the hip joint, but we'll pull the left leg just slightly wider. And keeping the pelvis fairly grounded and balanced on both sides, come onto the outer edge of your left foot. Knee travels away. And then tip the left leg towards your middle, coming onto the big toe side of your foot. And if your left leg meets your right leg, mine doesn't quite meet on this side unless I bring my right leg in, then give it a squeeze. The right leg might try to move along here, but let's really focus just on slowly mobilizing that left hip through that range. Aiming to keep the right foot flat and the right knee in the same line as your right hip. One more. Let's move into that all stretched out position again. Legs long. They can even come out a little wider if you like that, letting the toes roll either out or in, whatever comes naturally to your body. Welcoming breath. More connection to ease, and that breath can be that tether. As you inhale, feel the diaphragm and the pelvic floor both descend softly. You don't have to worry about doing that, it just happens. And energetically observe the rebounding of those tissues as you exhale. A soft and welcoming experience for your breath. Okay, so we're going to have a little change of scenery set up here. We'll need to have access to slippery surface, so you could either just take your whole body off to the side of your mat. I'm not going to do that because it's too cold, but what I am going to do is roll up my mat about halfway and then lay my bum to the end of that roll. And then I'll use this little towel to slide on. We just need one slidey surface. So it could be sock or paper plate or whatever you got. I wondered if you had carpet. I know paper plate would work, but what if you had wax paper? I suppose that would be wrinkly and noisy, but it might slide. Okay, so let's put that towel or whatever you have to slide on. I gotta come down a little more. Make sure your bum's to the bottom there, so you could get your foot really close to your seat when you're sliding it. Put it underneath your right foot. And we'll keep the left leg bent for now and extend the right leg out. So just slide the heel away from you. When you get to your end range and your knee is mostly straight or all the way straight, externally rotate your right hip so your toes point out to the side. And then drag your heel back towards your bum. Get it as close as you can. And then push it back away. And you could add in a little extra effort here, of course, but it can be super soft. When your leg goes back to extension, turn your toes back straight up so your leg is neutrally rotated. Let's use the top of the thigh as our moving landmark for rotation. So you can visualize a smiley face there, or a target, or any other shape that you connect with. Let's roll open the thigh, external rotation, toes point to the right. Drag your heel closer to your bum, as close as you can get it. And then extend your leg back to neutral rotation. 3 more with the external rotation at your own pace. Now, when you extend your leg this time, bring your heel a little bit wider than your hip frame. That might make your internal rotation a little more accessible. If it does not, you can move your leg back in. Dial your toes inward, try to turn that target towards your midline, and then once again bend your knee. When your heel comes towards your body now, it should be outside the frame of your hip by a little ways. And then keep that internal rotation as you stretch your legs straight, adjust back to neutral rotation. Keep going to the inward turn, bend your knee, slide your heel in, pull it outside the frame of your hips. So it feels like your knee is pointing to the front left corner of your mat. Working through these repetitions at a pace that's accessible, with the appropriate amount of resistance for you, with your foot sliding on the floor. You can always do more reps than me. You could do less. Let's do 2 more. And then you can keep that slider down where it is and bring your right leg up and just give it a little twirl. That could be assisted with your right hand, or you can just move your leg freely. Stamp your right foot down. Let's see if you can find that slider now and glide it underneath your left heel bone. Start with neutral rotation of left hip. And then rotate it outward. That moving target is the top of your thigh. Pull it in towards your tush as far as it'll go. So you might feel your hamstrings connect there behind the knee. Keep external rotation as you push away. And then roll it back to center. Try 4 or 5 more at least. Don't worry too much about counting. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it might keep you occupied. Next repetitions, we will target the medial rotations. Start the neutral. Take your leg out just a little bit to the left. Ooh, this leg doesn't like to internally rotate. Toes pointing in. And then when you bend your knee, your heel should come outside the frame of your hip, as if you could reach your your left knee towards the right front corner of your mat. And then keep that flow going. Could be a tendency on this internal rotation experience where your low back is trying to arch a little bit and maybe your front ribs tend to flare. It's probably fine. It's just kind of a compensation to notice. Out of curiosity. I'm going to do just one more. And then you can leave your slider where it is, rebend both knees, find your neutral, and let's keep the feet, I don't know, hips width or so, maybe a touch wider, but let the knees come together. So both thighs are internally rotating. If you feel like your left hip needs to circle, I just realized I forgot that, so feel free to add that in. Some soft spirals here in all directions. And after you complete that, bring both legs in for a bit. You can interlace your hands behind your legs. You could use your strap. You could hold the front of your shins. Let your pelvis tip so that your low back gains a little bit of length towards the floor. Okay, so we have another setup here. We're going to get our mat back all the way down to the ground so that it's underneath your body all the way. And your body's fully supported. Oops, sorry, that was loud. And then we're going to be on our front for a little, actually it's more of a sideline position. So we're going to take the right arm, and you're going to need a block for this too. The right arm is going to stretch out towards the front of your mat. And almost like you're going to lay halfway on your side and halfway on your front. Bring your right leg all the way down to the bottom of your mat so that right leg is straight in line with your hip more or less. And then your block is going to go underneath your left knee and have that left knee at about 90 degrees or so from your body. So the thigh is relative to the front of your mat and your shin is maybe more relative to the long edge. And just let your head lay on your arm. For now, we're just going to let this left leg chill and just kind of breathe into the sides, breathe into the front, breathe into the back, feeling that 3D experience as that diaphragm is connected to the whole perimeter. You can think of a jellyfish. The top of that jellyfish, that dome, kind of reminds me of the way the diaphragm is. It can be an interesting visual to play with your breathing. And then in response to that diaphragmatic movement, we have the almost like a trampoline effect in the pelvic floor. Just a little bit of a give on the inhale, and then a soft recoil, reflexive recoil, natural on the exhale. If the bottom leg, the right leg, is more comfortable in a bent knee position, it's totally fine to do that. I just realized it was more comfortable for me, so I thought I'd offer that. We're going to move into some gentle rotations here now with this top leg hip. So bringing your mind back to the target of your top left thigh. We're going to turn that into or toward the block for internal rotation. Doesn't have to be a big movement. And as you turn that left hip in, be aware of the natural tendency to hike the pelvis up towards the ribs, and try to keep that left side pelvis just even with the right. You might notice here as you rotate your hip, your ankle also, because it's trying to help, might turn and twist a little bit. Nothing wrong with that. But as you hold this shape, perhaps we can be more attentive to that hip spiral. You could even take your thumb here next to kind of your hip crease to the outside of it and maybe even above it. You might be able to feel your tensor fasciae latae muscle contracting, your TFL. We've talked about that in other classes. That's a muscle that connects into your IT band. Now, if you want a little extra here, keep what you've got and try to press more firmly with that left leg into the block. And we'll just hold that for 5, 4, 3, 2, and then relax back out of rotation. Just let your left foot come back to the ground and breathe. Bring your left hand out in front of you to help you with your balance here. Snuggle your bottom leg, your right leg a little closer to that block, and then open up your left leg and tap your left foot behind your right foot. And try to get that left thigh now to externally rotate. Inner thigh open towards the long edge of your mat. Mobilize your left hip in any way that feels good. I'm going to just give mine a little spin. And then let's switch sides. Roll on to the left. Stack right hip, or right knee, I guess it is, on the block. Looking for that roughly 90-degree bend at the hip and at the knee. And for now, we're just relaxing into the shape. And then let's turn into that hip internal rotation. And we're going to take it gradually. It was a fairly long hold on the other side, so just take it a few degrees at a time. And you might feel like you hit a roadblock, and so then just pause right there at that roadblock. Give it a few breaths. And if we can try to stay somewhat relaxed in this, reason stands that you'll be able to get a few more degrees of motion using time. Be mindful that it is a hip movement and not a pelvic lift. And then also notice what that ankle's up to. The extra would be to press down more into the block. And then let's let that go. Oof. A little pat down. Okay, so the left leg might need to come forward just a touch. And then we'll open up the right, externally rotate. Maybe the toes only can find the ground. If the whole foot can flatten out, that's good too. It can be a little happening in terms of rotation through that lower body to help you access the ground with your right foot if needed. When you feel ready here, reintroduce a little bit of soft shifting or rotation for your right hip. Okay, and then we're going to make our way back to our back. And once you arrive, knees are going to be bent once again, and right leg will cross over, right ankle, I should say, will cross over the left. And for this one, instead of thinking of just rotating this right hip open like we normally do for figure 4, we're going to do that, but then we're going to pair it with bringing that right knee in towards your midline and taking a look at your ankle and trying to keep your ankle straight so we're not just bending at that joint, but we're moving, essentially we're moving this right hip back into adduction, but we're still keeping a little bit of external rotation. So I'm hoping you might be feeling a little stretch here somewhere in the outer hip region. And we'll just do that a few times. So it kind of feels like a wing opening and closing. You could even use your left hand to assist that right leg coming back towards your center, towards your midline. Feels kind of nice. But we'll keep that foot hooked on left leg. Let's do 2 more. And now same leg here, right leg is going to step wide, maybe even off your mat, and find some internal rotation. You could let your right leg meet your left, or you could put a yoga block underneath your right knee. Just a couple more breaths here. Now, as you send your right leg all the way straight to the ground, you can keep your left leg bent and just kind of jelly roll this left leg up to the sides, rolling it in, rolling it out. You can rock the pelvis, you can let the left leg join in. Just kind of rolling it as much as it wants. And then switch sides, left ankle over the right thigh. First, finding good external rotation of left thigh bone. We're also sweeping it away from the body technically. And then working to keep your left ankle relatively straight, just try to pull your knee across any amount, with or without the assistance of that right hand. Alternating at your own speed. Last couple. Unwind left leg, step your foot wide. And then spiral left hip towards the right front corner of your mat, or anywhere that's comfortable. Just some internal rotation again. And then let's finish with either a happy baby-like shape, or you could do a supine straddle position. You could do one leg at a time using your strap if you wanted to, or you could try to do it bilaterally and just use your arms behind your legs. let's get cozy for rest.
If you like cobbler's pose, that could be an option for that resting pose, or good old Shavasana.
Let's follow the breath for a few rounds, and perhaps making that cycle and that experience and that energy more intentional, more full-bodied, more present, purposeful, until you feel ready to let all of that go and just be effortless. remain easeful and resting for a few brief moments, taking our mind's attention through our bodies. And if what we find is that we aren't done with our Shavasana just yet, we can stay. If and when you are ready to move, that'll be all on your own time, being guided by your own instincts. I'd like to thank you for moving with me today, or whenever it is that you practice. I hope you take care of yourselves. Thank you. Namaste.